It was the kind of smile that doesn't belong in a photograph. Too alive. Too aware. The kind that makes you feel, for a moment, like the person is standing in front of you, waiting for you to answer a question you didn't hear. Captured in the bleached haze of a Polaroid, edges curling, the surface already spiderwebbed with hairline cracks, the colors retreating toward a pale and ghostly yellow. Someone had taken it in the corner of a room at night. You can see the faint arc of a lampshade, the glint of glass, and her face, just off-center, as though she had stepped forward at the very last second. That photo passed between friends and whispers, in kitchens and basements, as though it were contraband. Someone would take it from their pocket, hold it for a few seconds, and hand it off again. No one ever kept it for long. No one wanted to. They called her warm, almost too warm. She could soften an argument just by looking at you. But in the weeks before she disappeared, that warmth had been replaced by something else. A kind of precision. She stopped staying long at gatherings. She'd listen more than she spoke. Sometimes she would close her eyes in the middle of someone's story, as though checking the weight of their words. People assumed she was distracted. But the truth, if you piece it together now, is that she was watching everything. We know she made phone calls late at night. 6 in 3 days. Always to the same non-emergency line. The recordings are gone, but the logs survived. Each call lasted under 2 minutes. In every case, she hung up before the operator could ask her name. Why call if you didn't want to be known? Unless the voice you were waiting for would only answer if you never gave it. The search of her apartment turned up little. No sign of a break-in. No valuables missing. But there was a note. Torn from the corner of a receipt, ballpoint ink almost dry. It's not who they say it is, but it's still them. The handwriting matches hers, though the angle of the letters tilts upward, as if written in a hurry, standing, pen digging into the paper. No date. No context. No explanation. The neighbors noticed something too. Vehicles that didn't belong. Parked just past the edge of the streetlight's reach. Same make and model, dark sedans, tinted windows, but never the same plate twice. They arrived after midnight, engines ticking as they cooled, stayed until dawn. No one saw the drivers get out. No one saw them leave. And there's the matter of the street corner in the Polaroid. A simple backdrop. A concrete curb, a painted hydrant, a leaning street sign. It doesn't exist anymore. In its place now stands a fenced-off lot, chain link, padlocked, the ground uneven and cracked. The city keeps no record of demolition permits. No photos of the process. In official archives, that block still appears intact. Her last public trace was online. A single post, hours before she vanished. A lyric from a song she never mentioned liking. At first, it seemed random, but the words, when searched, led to a hidden forum. Accessed only through a sequence of redirects, it exists outside the surface web. Threads disappear mid-scroll. Conversations cut off mid-sentence. The only discussions that persist are about experiments, unacknowledged, undocumented, in towns with no reason to be on a map. Looking back, you can see the shape of something pressing in around her. The phone calls. The strange cars. The note. The Polaroid's missing street. The lyric that was really a key. She wasn't running from one person. She was circling something. Closing in. And whatever it was, it smiled back that IT sat on a shelf in the back room of a thrift store, spine cracked but still holding, the leather darkened by hands long gone. The tag said $5. The clerk said it came from an estate cleanout, the kind where no one asks questions because the family isn't there to answer them. Inside, in neat lines, were the names of guests from a lakeside inn that closed before most people alive could remember it. Dates. Room numbers. Short notes in the margins about weather, fishing conditions, or local gossip. It should have been a record of small joys. But the further you turn the pages, the more it stopped feeling like a souvenir and more like something alive, still being fed. Entries appear well past the year the inn shuttered. The handwriting shifts. First subtly, then dramatically, the loops and strokes changing as if new hands had taken over. Some names belonged to people who, by the dates written, had been dead for years. A woman who drowned in '73, noted as having stayed in room 4 in 1985. A man whose obituary ran in 1990, recorded as checking in during the spring of '94. None of it should have been possible, but each name was written with the same calm certainty as the others, no sign of forgery. County archives include scans of the ledger from the year the building was condemned. Water stains creep into the paper like bruises, but the patterns don't match the official flood maps for that year. The high water line in the scans runs in a direction opposite the documented shoreline breach, which means the water came from somewhere else, or was already inside. Some names match aliases later revealed in federal court documents tied to undercover sting operations in the '80s, operations that never took place anywhere near the lake, at least not publicly. Cross-referencing them reveals an uncomfortable overlap. The same guests appearing in the ledger during years they were supposedly halfway across the country running operations. The margins hold more than idle notes. A small, curling shorthand, almost decorative, repeats in certain clusters. Analysts who've seen it say it's near identical to the field cipher used by Cold War intelligence operatives, a compression of words into symbols designed to be read quickly and forgotten faster. Most of the margin marks appear next to the names that shouldn't be there. On still mornings, local fishermen talk about their sonar behaving strangely on the stretch of lake directly opposite where the inn once stood. Screens light up with the outlines of metallic forms, not scattered debris, but shapes with symmetry and angles, resting too deep for any known structure. No one's pulled them up. No one seems eager to try. A declassified environmental survey, quietly posted online in 2014, notes that in 1997 the lake was closed for infrastructure assessment. No media coverage. No public notice. The closure lasted 9 days. Whatever was found, or moved, left no trace in official logs beyond a single line of bureaucratic language. The ledger doesn't say what happened in those days. But there's a gap in the dates, a sudden jump in the names. And when they resume, the handwriting has changed again. It was never on the brochures, never offered at the front desk. Yet every night from the street below, you could see the faint gold of its curtains glowing in the dark. Room 6. No one ever booked it. Not officially. But ask around, and locals will tell you about the time someone slipped in by mistake, a wrong turn in the hallway, a drunken wander after midnight. They all say the same thing. It felt like stepping into a memory you couldn't possibly have lived. The furniture was too deliberate, as though someone had arranged every object to match a photograph they didn't have. The air smelled faintly of rain on warm concrete. And there was always the sense that someone had just left, seconds before you walked in. The hotel's surveillance cameras covered every floor, every angle, except for the weeks they didn't. Hallway footage outside room 6 is missing for 11 consecutive nights. The gap overlaps perfectly with 3 open missing persons cases, travelers who checked in but never checked out, their cars later found abandoned miles away. Official reports describe no connection. Unofficially, the families of the missing have all visited the hotel at least once, standing at the threshold of the room's locked door. Maintenance logs tell their own story. Over a span of 6 years, work orders for furniture replacement were filed again and again. No reports of vandalism. No damage claims. Just silent removals and quiet returns, as though the furniture was never meant to stay for long. The receipts list no manufacturers, only handwritten supplier codes that lead nowhere. Through its single window, the view should have been ordinary. A bend in the road, a cluster of trees. But old maps and aerial photographs reveal something else. Before the hotel expanded its lot, the sightline from room 6 pointed directly to a landmark erased in a corporate land dispute. A building with no blueprints, no surviving records, and an address that now belongs to an empty patch of asphalt. One past guest, a traveling salesman in his 70s, swore he woke to the sound of typewriters in the middle of the night. The keys clacked with the rhythm of a practiced stenographer, stopping abruptly whenever he moved. No typewriters were in the building. None had been for decades. From 2010 to 2015, every room key in the hotel was tagged with RFID chips, each entry and exit logged by the server. Except for room 6. The data for those years is gone. Not corrupted, not misplaced, but deleted in blocks so clean they left no traces in the system's recovery logs. In the records that remain, Room 6 appears as it always did, unlisted, unbooked, and always lit. They found it behind a single brick, one that came loose with almost no effort, as if it had been waiting for decades to be disturbed. There was no wiring, no insulation, just a hollow pocket in the wall where the dust seemed older than the building itself. Inside that cavity sat a shoebox, its cardboard faded to the color of old ash. The crew didn't call it in. They didn't even open it right away. The foreman said later that it felt heavier than it should have, as if something inside was pulling down harder than gravity allowed. And there was a smell, faint, metallic, not the scent of rust but of something that had been sealed away for far too long. When they finally pried open the lid, it wasn't jewelry, money, or letters. It was a single VHS cassette. No label. No markings. Just black plastic dulled with age and a reel of magnetic tape wound tight, like it had been holding its breath. The footage begins with disarming simplicity. A dinner table set for 5, bathed in the warm bloom of a yellow lamp. Steam rising from bowls. A child laughing at something off-screen. The camera pans, showing a couple slow dancing in a living room, the faint static of old audio swallowing the music beneath. A dog watches from a couch, blinking against the camera's light. It feels ordinary, comforting even, until you notice the things that don't fit. The door frames curve slightly inward. The streets outside bend toward a horizon that doesn't match any known geography. In one shot, the camera drifts upward toward the sky, and you realize the constellations are wrong. A familiar star missing. Another, brighter, burning where no telescope says it should. And then there's the woman. You see her first at the dinner table, speaking softly to the child. Later, she's leaning in a doorway, her eyes fixed on the camera with the faintest trace of a smile. In another clip, she's sitting on a porch, her hair stirred by the wind. The decades pass in the footage. Hairstyles change, furniture is replaced, technology in the background moves forward, but her face does not. No lines, no aging. The same skin, the same eyes, the same exact shape of her smile. She is constant, unshaken by the erosion of time. The last 30 seconds are different. The movements become abrupt, shaky. The camera swings toward a wall covered edge to edge with photographs. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Every single one a face. Laughing, candid, mid-blink, but each later confirmed to be a person now dead. Many of the names match entries from unsolved disappearance records. Others were found in obituaries tied to sudden, unexplained deaths. The dates written on the backs of the photos span more than 40 years, and the handwriting never changes. Not in slope, not in pressure, not in ink. Forensic audio analysts stripped the tape's sound to its bones. Beneath the faint hiss of static and room noise, they found whispers, dozens of voices, layered like threads in a knot. The language is unrecognizable, but certain sounds repeat with mathematical precision, as if responding to questions the audience will never hear. Some phrases grow louder when the woman is in frame, like the voices are speaking to her, or through her. Then came the magnetic analysis. The tape's physical signature was wrong. Certain segments matched frequencies once used for classified military transmissions, encrypted channels from decades past, inaccessible to civilian equipment, which means the tape was not entirely recorded in those rooms. Parts of it were captured from somewhere else, pulled in from a signal never meant for public eyes. Somewhere beyond the wall, beyond the geography of the footage, and maybe beyond anything we're supposed to believe exists at all. Do you want me to now build Chapter 5 in the same 4,000 character style so your documentary arc is complete? It starts like an afterthought, a slow drift toward the familiar. A few faces returning to the same kitchen table, their voices softer now, as if afraid of being overheard. A ledger no one had touched in years quietly slid back onto its shelf. A sketch of the lake, drawn not from life but from the recesses of someone's memory, each line hesitant, as though the artist feared getting it right. At first, these moments seem benign, scraps from different lives, different places, different years. But then the edges start to bleed into one another. The smile, the ledger, the hidden room, the tape, They don't just align in tone. They align in time. The cross-referencing begins with a simple overlap of dates. But the deeper you dig, the more impossible the math becomes. Every artifact, every record, every photograph ties itself to the same 3 days. A single, unbroken 72-hour period from 14 years ago. Some timestamps appear hours apart but are separated by hundreds of miles on paper. The VHS reel, the Polaroid's manufacturing code, the ink batch on the ledger entries, all traceable to that same frozen pocket of time. The suggestion is unthinkable. Either the events were staged in perfect synchronicity, or time itself was bent to accommodate them. The whistleblower comes next. He doesn't give his real name. Says it's not important anymore. His voice is hoarse, a smoker's rasp, but his cadence is calm, precise. He claims he was part of a cultural preservation project run not by the government, but by a private intelligence firm with no official records, no address, no public contracts. Their work wasn't about archiving artifacts, it was about preserving atmospheres, reconstructing exact sensory environments, the way light slanted through a curtain, the scent of damp wood, the ambient hum of a distant transformer. He uses a term you've never heard before, empathic mapping. Places were being curated not for memory, but for emotional reassembly. Then there are the sightings. Different towns, different years. Always the same man. Silver hair, perfectly combed. A tailored gray suit, no matter the weather. A black umbrella he never opens, even in the rain. His name never appears in any official record, but his face shows up in the background of photographs, in the corner of security footage, reflected in glass behind the main subject. He doesn't look at the camera. He doesn't need to. The patterns emerge when the artifacts are analyzed not as objects, but as transmissions. The ledger's inconsistent inks, the subtle tracking errors in the VHS, the coded sequence embedded in the Polaroid's photo paper, together they match an encryption protocol once used in obsolete weather satellites. A dead system, long abandoned, or so it was believed. This protocol wasn't meant for meteorology. It was meant for targeting. The whistleblower's final note arrives in a plain envelope, slid under a door in the middle of the night. The handwriting is rushed, slanting upward, as if written mid-flight. The ink has bled slightly into the paper, blurring the last line but leaving it legible enough to read once, and then maybe never again. These moments aren't ours, they're theirs. And they're still being written. If you'd like, I can now stitch all 5 chapters into one seamless 18 to 22-minute cinematic script with continuous VO flow and no structural seams. That would make it sound like a single obsessive, late-night documentary.